श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। कृदण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विशेषैवरोगिणामधे सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्ते नमः। व्यासम् अष्टनप्तारं शक्ते पौत्रमकल्मषं पराशरात्मनि वन्दे शुकदातं तपोनिधिम्। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते ह्रीं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। नारायणपरो व्यक्तादण्डमव्यक्तसम्भवं मुण्डस्यान्तस्तु मे लोकाः सप्तद्वीपा च मेदिनी। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणे स्वयं व्यासेन कृतितं पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीमष्टादशाध्यायिनं वा त्वां सन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवेद्वेषिणी। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। अवतीर्णश्च कालट्यां केदारेन्तरितश्च पीठप्रतिष्ठाता चेतात् शङ्करो गुरुः. So we were looking at the 18th shloka of Jnana-Karma-Sanyasa yoga. Karmanya karmayah pashyet karmani cha karmayah sa buddhiman manusheshu sayukta krishna karma krita. So he who finds inaction in action and action in action, he is the wise one among the men. He is engaged in yoga and is the performer of all actions. So effectively what here Bhagavan is saying is, so the one who in action, that means in the functioning of the body, organs and so on, where it is with, whether it is with the, whether again the karmani here includes both karma and vikarma, the karmas which have been enjoined by the scriptures and also those which are prohibited by the scriptures, Shāstras. So if one is engaged in the body, organs and so on, is engaged in those karmas, if those are again those which karmas which are superimposed on the Atma, just like when we say tree is moving, when we are going in a boat in the river, right? So we say that tree is moving. So we, even though trees are stationary, just like we superimpose on that action on something else. Similarly, one who sees in those karmas, when he sees akarmas, so that is inaction, okay? And similarly in inaction, one sees action. So for example, trees, unmoving trees, one sees as moving, or for example, seeing inaction in action is, for example, in the distance, some people are moving or something is moving, but you see that all those things are stationary because it is at quite a distance. We see that everything is stationary. So so again, the key thing here is what Bhagavan is saying, finding action and inaction and action, is that the idea that entertained here is, since the action is the source of the bondage, therefore I should indeed remain quiet. If one thinks like that, that is false, because action, karma, is enjoined, whether it is enjoined by the scriptures or it is prohibited, it is not a source of bondage in the absence of idea of agentship. So if we think that I am the doer, the Atma is the doer of the those karmas, then it is the agentship that comes in. So then that has been what has been explained by Bhagavan as well in this 14th shloka, for example, where he said, Namam karmani limpanti name karma pale spraha. Actions do not taint me, and so on, when he said that. So when there is an idea of agentship, then even the action consisting of egoistic idea saying, I sit quietly, if even such a thing becomes the source of bondage. because the true nature of that reality, that supreme reality, remains unknown for that person. Therefore, knowing in this way the truth about the karma, vikarma, akarma, and giving up the prohibited actions, vikarmas, and inactions, Bhagavan is saying you perform those karmas enjoined by the Shastras, and by giving up the idea of agentship and craving for the results, you engage in action. That's what Bhagavan is saying. So, and though the mutual superimposition is still he that one points in that pure entity, such a person is the Buddhiman among all the men. He is the Buddhiman among Manusheshu. He is among the Buddhiman among the humans, among all the men. He is the one who sees the highest truth, whereas the others don't. So the message again Bhagavan is saying is when you are thinking that you are performing the karma, when you are thinking that you are not performing any karma, sakarma, so you are sitting idle. Even then, think that Atma is not engaged in the karmas. The one who knows that, he is the Buddhiman, he is the Yukta, he is the engaged in one yogin, engaged in yogas, and such a person, even when he is doing the karmas, he is Krishna Karma Krita. He is the one who is actually, even though he's performing all the karmas, he is not actually performing. Even though he's not performing all the karmas, he is performing. He is the one who is the performer of all the karmas. That's what Bhagavan says. Because such a person does not have any attachment. He does not have any agentships. He does not say that I am doing this, or he does not say that I am not doing this. Because he knows that he thinks that that means the Atma for him is not doing any of that. It is the body that is doing. So that's why he does not take. So that's why knowing that Atma alone is possible. So that's why that supreme truth, one who knows that, he is the yogi. He is the one engaged in the yoga. He is the Buddhiman among the Manushya, among the human beings. That's what Bhagavan says. So when he again, what he said that when he previously said that Yajñāta Mokṣisaya Shubhat, so by knowing this you will become free from the evil. So what is Bhagavan is saying that once you know that Atma is not engaged in this karmas, you become free from all those evils. So because it is not possible to be liberated from the evil by knowing anything else. So the only way to know liberated from the evil is to know that, have that Atma Jnana, and that's why he says that. So, and Acharya, as we started looking last time, Bhagavad Pada explains in detail, and similarly Srimad Saraswati as well goes into explaining the alternative meanings people explain. For example, using Nitya Karmas as an example for Bhagavan. What Bhagavan is talking here is about Nitya Karmas. That's what the other explanation is. People say, and Acharyas and Srimad Saraswati as well. In fact, Madhusudan Saraswati explains this little bit, and then he says that Bhashyakara has already explained all this. So the Bhashya, the one who has written Bhashya on this Bhagavad Gita, that is Shankaracharya, has already explained this in very much in detail. So I'm not going to go into much details. He already explains a lot about a couple of pages, and then he says that Bhagavad Pada has already explained all this. So I'm not going. So again, when the other people, which Shankaracharya says, have got a wrong idea about this shloka, when the other people, when they say Nitya Karmas, so Nitya Karmas again, if you remember, Nitya Karmas we perform saying that Parameshwara Prityartham, right? So it is only to please the Bhagavan we do that. We don't say that when we're doing Parameshwara Dharmartha Kama Moksha Dhartama Ayura Arogya, we don't have any list, okay? So it is just to please the Bhagavan, we do those Nitya Karma, Sandhya, or any of those, right? So those karmas, Nitya Karmas, so what other people interpret this shloka as, if we don't perform those Nitya Karmas, evil arises. You will get sin. right? So that means that is the action. So that's why you have to perform that action. But when you perform those actions, you are doing it as a Parameshwara Prityartham. So you are doing it to please, to make Ishvara happy, right? To please Ishvara, nothing else. You don't have any other attachment to that Nitya Karmas. When you perform Sandhya Vandana, you don't have any attachment saying that I want that, I want these results or anything. No such sankalpa. That's why it is considered a karma, inaction. Okay, so that's how the other people interpret. So you see, the same action could be the performing those nitya karmas could be seen as a karma because we are not looking for the results, but also can be seen as a karma because if you don't do it, you will get sin. Okay, by not performing Sandhya Vandana, you will get sin. So that's why it is can be looked at like that as well. But Acharya says that that's not the case because the knowledge is part is important here. Because ajñātva mokṣite ashubhat. So by knowing this, you will be freed from the evil. That's what Bhagavan said previously, right? So here, by knowing that nitya karmas, by not doing it, it results in sin, you are not going to get moksha. So that's why Acharya explains in detail that that is not the case. What Bhagavan is saying here is the attachment to the agentship. Whether you're performing the karma or not performing the karma, when you are performing the karma, think that it is not the Atma who is doing. That is why it is akarma. And when you are not doing also, think that this is the Atma, which is not attached to any of the karmas. Okay, so then also it is not. It is a bodily karma that's what being happening. It is not the Atma which is engaged in. So think like that. That's what Acharya is explaining. So it is not related to any specific karmas like nitya karmas or anything where this. So that's the explanation Acharya gives, and he explains that the perception of inaction, and so on, Bhagavan explains in the next shloka, where he goes on to explain who is that sannyasi, who is that yukta, who is that buddhiman among manusheshu, he explains, right? So he explains that in the next shloka, in the 18th shloka, Bhagavan explains in this. He says that the shloka goes like this: Yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanakti dagdha karmanam tamahu panditam buddhaha. So yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanakti dagdha karmanam tamahu panditam buddhaha. So the wise call him learned, whose actions are all devoid of desires and their causes, and whose actions have been burnt away by the fire of wisdom. Yasya means who, sarve is every, samarambha means undertaking, kama means desire for material pleasures, sankalpa means resolve, varjita means devoid of, jnana means the divine knowledge, agni means in the fire, dagda means burnt, karmana means actions, tam means him, ahu means address, pandita means the panditsas, the knowledgeable, the realized men, the sannyasis, Buddha means the wise. So here Acharya explains this as the wise, the Buddha, the wise, the knower of the Brahmas. The Buddha here is the one who has realized that, who has attained that Brahmajnana. They call him as Panditam. They call him as Pandita, the learned, in the real sense, that is the one who perceives, as stated previously, in the karma, in the akarma, akarma, in the karma. So when he sees like that, who perceives like that, the actions, whatever that are undertaken, are all kamahi tatkaraneshcha sankalpe varjitha mudaiva cheshta matra anuštiyante. So those are those who as previously looked at, they perceives all those actions, whatever they are undertaken, all those are of devoid of desires and thoughts, which are their causes, right? So first of all, the thoughts are the causes of those desires. So that is, again, Bhagavan Acharya explains that pravrittena chet loka sangrahartam, nivrittena chet jivana matrartam. So again, those actions are performed as a mere movements without any selfish purpose. If it is done like that, if they are performed only if they are performed by the one who is already engaged in the karmas, then they are doing it for preventing the people going from astray, loka sangrahartam. And if they are done by the ones who has withdrawn from all the actions, then they are simply doing it for the maintenance of the body. So this is the karma sankalpa varjitaha. And jnanagni dagda karmana, Bhagavad Pada explains that whose actions have been burnt away by the fire of wisdom. So here again, the word karma sankalpa is translated differently as desires and purposes, plans and desires of results, hankering for results, and so on. But Sri Shankaracharya shows that the sankalpa is the cause of the kama. Again, if you go back to second chapter, second adhyaya, where Sankhya Yoga Bhagavan explains in the 62nd and 63rd shloka, Bhagavan explains that dhyayato vishyam pumsah sangastejo sangat sanjayate kama, kamot krodho vijayate, krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat sprativibramah, sprativramshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. Right? So there Bhagavan explains that dhyayato vishyam pumsah. So if you are continuously thinking about the vishayas, okay, the things which senses and organs are get attached to, attracted to, those are the vishayas. So always thinking about them, then the mind gets attached to that. The kama comes, and from kama the krodha comes. From krodha, sammoha, smriti, the mind buddhinasha. Right? And then when buddhinasha happens, he is pranashyati. He is as good as dead. So Acharya here, kama sankalpa varjitaha, he says that sankalpa itself, that thinking about itself, the making that thoughts itself is the one root cause of those kamas. If we don't have those thoughts coming through, then the desires don't come. So he says, that's why he says that, and those who do not have those thoughts and those desires, their actions have been burnt away by the fire of this wisdom. Karmado akarmadhi darshanam jnanam tadeva agnihi tena jnanagnina dagdani shubhashubha lakshanani karmani yasyatam ahu. So finding inaction and so on in the action and so on, so as previously said, is jnana. That is the wisdom. And that itself is the agni, is the fire. And whose actions, that is the karma, which can be described as good and bad, have been burnt away by that fire of wisdom, is jnana agni dagda karma. So that's how Acharya explains for this shloka. So again, here Acharya explaining this shloka. So the previously realized, whoever is that highest truth, who has realized in action and inaction and inaction and inaction, and that no agentship, no hankering for the results and things are, whose all the survey in the shloka, all the, whether it is Vedic rites or the mundane actions, whatever it is, samaramba, those actions according to the derivation, again, those that are commenced are devoid of desire and resolve. Again, desire means hankering for the results. Sankalpa is resolve. That is the idea of agentship. I do this. And devoid of those two, kama and sankalpa, whose actions for lokasangraha or for mere maintenance of the body take in the form of vain attempts due to impulse prarabdha karma. And for him, those actions whose actions have been burnt away by that fire of wisdom, consisting of seeing action and inaction and inaction and action, that itself is the fire. And who has his actions characterized as good and bad, those actions are burnt. Again, so for example, in Brahma Sutra, it says that on realization of that Brahman, there occurs the non-relation and destruction of the subsequent and previous sins, respectively, because it is declared so. So Brahma Sutra says that all the sins are destroyed. So like this here as well, whether it is good karma or bad karma, that person who has that realized that highest truth, his karmas are burnt in that wisdom. And for him, the wise, that is the knower of the Brahmans, call him as Pandita. They call him as the one who has perfect knowledge. Pandita is the one who has the perfect knowledge, but not the one who is deluded. So, like this, the Bhagavan explains here that such a person is the one. So now the question is, Bhagavan goes on to explain, and Acharya details this, saying that the Sanyasi's worldly actions are simply an example for the masses, for the world public. It is just an example. So even though he has attained that Brahmajnana, he may still continue to perform. Again, we previously looked at this example in the previous Adhyaya as well as Janaka and others as an example, right? Them performing those karmas for Lokasangrahartam. And similarly here as well, Bhagavan says that, and Acharya explains that the one who is the perceiver of inaction and so on, that is the perceiver of inaction and so on, he who knows that highest truth about the action and inaction as explained in the previous shlokas, such a person is free from the karmas, owing to the very fact that his seeing that inaction and so on, Sanyasi jivana matrartha cheshta san karmani na pravartate yadyapi prak vivekatha pravarta. So he is a muni, he is a sannyasi who acts simply for the purpose of maintaining the body. And being so, he does not engage in the karmas, although he might have done so before the dawn of that discrimination, that viveka, that jnana. So that viveka, before that dawn of that viveka, discrimination, he may have done the karma before, but now he does not engage in that. Now, if he engages in the karmas, it is purely for the purpose of maintaining the body, because that body is prarabdha karma. Yestu prarabdha karma san uttarakalam utpannatma samyak darshanah syat sak sarvakarmani prayojanam pashyan sasadhanam karma parityajatyeva. So paritajyateva. So he says that he again, who having been engaged in action and engaged in the karmas under the influence of past tendencies, prarabdha karma, because of that he is engaged previously in the karmas, later on becomes, and he is endowed with fullest atma jnana. So samyak darshanam utpanna atma jnana utpannatma samyak darshana. So after that fullest, that self knowledge, he attains that, he surely renounces all the karmas along with the accessories, as he does not find any purpose in those karmas. So Bhagavan says that such a muni, such a sannyasi, who previously may have performed the karmas before his dawn of that viveka, that discrimination, and that endowment of he was attained that fullest knowledge, self-knowledge, atma jnana. He may have performed those karmas because of the prarabdha karma, he past tendencies, he may have performed that, but he will renounce all those things. So, if for some reason, again, we may see Jagadguru performing karmas today, right? Puja, suratas, and all those things. We see them. Why they are performing? Have they not attained Brahmajnana? That question comes. So just now we said that once one attains that Brahmajnana, whatever he may have performed in his previous state, he will give up all those things, right? Now, Bhagavad explains that saha कुतश्चित् निमित्तात् कर्म परित्याग संभवे सति कर्मणि तत्फले च संगरहितायाः स्वप्रयोजनाभावात् लोकसंग्रहार्थं पूर्ववत् कर्मणि प्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किंचित् करोति. So for some reason, if it becomes impossible to renounce the actions, and he, for the sake of preventing the people from going astray, even remains engaged as before in the karmas without attachment to those karmas and their results, because the absence of any selfish purpose. Still, he surely does nothing at all. So, Acharya explains that Naiva kinchit karoti. So, even then, he does not do anything at all. Because even though he has attained that Brahmajnana, he still performs these karmas for preventing people going astray. Even that guru himself is not doing, why should I do? That's what we say, right? So to prevent us from going astray, that person may still continue to engage in the karmas, but without attachment. He will perform without attachment to those karmas and attachment to those results of those karmas. So such a person, he will perform because he will not have any selfish purpose. And such a person, when he is performing those karmas, even though he is performing those karmas, he does not do anything. That means that Atma, he is in that state, he thinks that he is not doing anything. Right? So that's the meaning again. Karma, finding karma and akarma, karma and karma. This is what the meaning here again. When one attains that stage, he thinks that he is not doing anything. Even though he's bodily is performing those karmas for loka sangraha, for preventing people going astray, he might still be doing that. He does not get attached to that or the results. The karmas or the results, he does not get attached. And jnanagni dagdha karmatvat tadiyam karma akarmaiva sampadhyate. So his action certainly becomes inaction because having burnt away by the fire of wisdom. That's what Acharya explains. So even though he's performing those karmas becomes inaction. That means they are like him not doing anything. Okay, so we can't even imagine such a state, because when I'm doing puja, I'm thinking I'm doing, right? I am the one who is doing. Okay. When we say I, we are talking about our Atma, right? So when we say I'm doing this, that means Aham Karta, we looked up previously, right? When we say Aham Karta, Aham Karomi, all these things, when we say I'm doing, I am the one doing, I am the one going to get benefit, all those things, we blame it on the Atma. I means we are talking about Atma, right? We are not talking about this body when we say I. So we have that agentship, ownership, we superimpose on all those karmas and everything on that Atma. But the realized person does not think that. He does not think that this Atma, he has that discriminating power, he has that viveka. Once that viveka attains, he, whatever, even if he, either he gives up completely all the karmas, okay, he is completely in that Brahmajnana, he stays in that Samadhi state. We can we hear a lot about Pradasmaraniya Sri Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswami, right? So he used to go in that Samadhi state for days and days, giving up literally every karma, and people started calling him all sort of things, okay? But he is in that state, and we looked at in the Sthita Prajna details when we looked at in this Sankhya Yoga, right? People do talk about such jnanis like that. But on the other hand, you can also see that people who are Brahmajnanis, they still engaged in the karmas. They engage because to prevent people going from astray, loka sangrahartam. They will continue to engage, but without attachment, without hankering for those results, because they do not have any selfish purpose. And such a karma, even when they are performing, because of that jnana-agni, burnt away that jnana-agni, that jnana, that fire, that wisdom, that fire of wisdom, that burns away that karma, and that's why this karma, even though bodily it is performed, it is considered as inaction. And by the way of pointing out this idea, Bhagavan says in the next shloka, he explains that Tyaktva karmapala asangam nityatrupto nirashrayah कर्मण्यपि प्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किंचित करोति सः त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासंगं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यपि प्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किंचित करोति सः. So having given up the attachment to the results of the actions, he who is ever contented, dependent on nothing, he really does not do anything, even though engaged in the karmas. So tyaktva means giving up, having given up. Karmapala asangam. So his attachment to the fruits of action. Nitya, always. Trupta, satisfied. Nirashraya, without dependence. Karmani means in activities, in actions. Avipravritta means engaged. Api, despite. Na, not. Eva, certainly. Kinchit, anything. Karoti, do. Saha, that person. So here Bhagavad Pada explains this in the Bhashya with the help of the previously mentioned wisdom, Jnana. So with the help of that Jnana, having given up the idea of agentship and attachment to the results of that karmas, so tyaktva palasangam, so having given up the agentship and the results of the actions, with the help of that jnana he has attained, he who is ever contented, nityatrupta, who has no hankering for the objects, and nirashraya, who is dependent on nothing. Ashraya means the one which a person leans, desiring to achieve a human goal, some human goal, right? So who is nirashraya, who is dependent on nothing. So with the help of that knowledge, he, having given up that agentship, having given up for those attachment, for those, he giving up those results, hankering for those results, he is always contented and he depends on nothing. So the idea is that he is not dependent on any support which may be a means of attaining some coveted seen or unseen result. In reality, vidusha kriyamanam karma paramarthato akarmaiva tasya nishkriyatma darshanam sampannatvat. So in reality, action done by a man of knowledge are certainly inaction. Karmas done by him, such a person of knowledge, is certainly is a karma, since he is endowed with that realization of that actionless Atma, self. Action together with their accessories must be relinquished by one who has become thus, because they have no end to serve for him. So, this being so, even though he remains engaged as before in the karmas, getting out of those karmas being impossible, either with intention of preventing people going astray, or with the view of avoiding censure of wise people, any of those reasons, he really does not do anything, because he is ended up with realization of that actionless self, actionless Atma, that Nishkriya Atma. That Atma is Nishkriya. So that actionless Atma, because of that realization of that, even though he is engaged as before, he continues to performing those, either to prevent people going astray or to avoid the censure of the wise people. He still does not do anything, because he is Nityatrupta, he is Nirashraya. So he is given up on his phalas, attachment for the results of those actions. He is that from the subjective standpoint of the enlightened, there is no action, but ordinary people mistakenly think them to be actions, which are in reality a simply appearance. It is not really action, it is an appearance of those actions, semblance of those actions. So again, having given up, having sublated through the complete realization of that Atma, that Jnana, as a non-agent and a non-enjoyer, the attachment, that is the idea of agentship, and the desire for the enjoyment of, with regard to the actions and their results, the one who is ever contented, that means he who, through the realization of his true nature as the supreme bliss, that Paramananda, it's such a person who is desireless with regard to everything, and who is Nirashraya, who is dependent on nothing. He, that means again, he who, for whom the adobe, that is the body, organs, and so on, has been removed from the realization of non-duality, who has no idea of identity with the body, organs, and so on, that person, having given up through the realization, he gives up all those agentship and the results. So again, Madhusudan Saraswati in his Bhashya explains that the two adjectives here used, Nityatrupta, Nirashraya, is saying those two adjectives are used respectively by the way of showing the reasons with regard to the cessation of those desire for results and the agentship of idea of agentship. So, the ever contented, that means he does not have any desires, and he does not depend. Nirashraya means he does not own anything. There is no agentship. So that's why those two adjectives are used. That's what Madhusudan Saraswati explains. And even though he has reached such a Jivan Mukta state, he is engaged in the actions, whether it is Vedic or mundane, in the state of Samadhi. When he is in that state, even though owing to prarabdha karmas, he appears to people to be engaged in that, performing in every way those karmas, together with their accessories and subsidiaries. Even though he's performing all those things, he, from his own standpoint, he does not really do anything. They have been sublated. They have been sublated by the realization of that Nishkriya Atma, actionless self. That's the meaning. So Here again, Bhagavad Pada explains that the sannyasi's actions for body maintenance only. That's what he does. On the other hand, the one who is opposite of the above mentioned, the previously just now what we mentioned, and who in whom even before undertaking the karmas has dawned the realization of his identity with the Brahman, the Absolute, all the pervasive, inmost, actionless Atma, the Pratyagatman, who, being bereft of solicitation for the desire of objects seen or unseen, has renounced the actions along with their accessories by the virtue of seeing no purpose to be served by undertaking the karmas meant to secure some seen or unseen results, and makes effort only for the maintenance of the body. He is the sannyasi, steadfast in the jnana, and such a sannyasi becomes free. Hence, in order to explain that, Bhagavan explains in the next shloka, which we will look at that in the next time when we gather, where we look at sannyasi performs his karmas just to maintain his body so that he can continue in that samadhi state. So we'll look at that next time.